Tony Shalhoub stars in the fourth season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Tony, one of the things I love about your character this season, and one of the biggest changes for Abe, is he becomes a theater critic, which he certainly seems to relish. So I just wanted to start by asking you, you've been on stage as a theater actor for decades. So how fun is it for you to kind of cross the line and be a theater critic, especially one that is brutally honest with his opinions?
It's exciting. Like all actors, like most actors, I have suffered at the hands of critics for years. In the early going, it was so bad. There's always that moment where you think, I'm just going to throw in the towel and forget this. But then I came to the realization that it would be healthier for me to just stop reading them. And so I did. I mean, of course, I read theater criticism, of other plays or films or anything, and I loved reading them. But for things that I was involved in, I guess I'm just too vulnerable or something. So, but for me to finally to take on that mantle as Abe, as a critic, was really exciting, because it's sort of payback time.
Yeah, I have to imagine one of the things about this show that you must love is just how much Abe reinvents himself every season. I mean, it's so fun to see Abe in different roles and in different life situations. So how much fun, and also how exciting is it every season to see Abe, changing and becoming a different person every year?
Well, it's just what what any actor would dream of when you commit to a series and that series, takes off, because it can happen with long-running things, television, streaming things, where you just get kind of painted into a corner, and your character is, it's realistic, it's well written, it's believable, but it's there to kind of serve a specific function. And so you're oftentimes, you're generally allowed to repeatedly, you're called on to play 1, 2, 3 colors for extended duration. So to have a character, and it's not just true of Abe, it's true of most of these characters in Maisel. They evolve, they reinvent themselves, they're forced to let go of things that have become part of their persona, and things that keep them sort of secure in their comfort zones, and our writers are asking us to release that. And so I love it. I love the fact that Abe in the pilot in season 1 started in one place and has taken many turns. It's a luxury.
Yeah, and as you're saying, all of the characters, especially this season, we see them reinventing themselves. Marin's character Rose becoming a matchmaker and really, loving that and becoming a passion. And I think something about that works so well this season, especially with Abe, is I think it kind of brings him closer to realizing what Midge is doing, having reinvented herself. So I just wanted to ask you, there's that fabulous scene with you and Rachel, where you get your first paycheck from the Village Voice and are quite disappointed in what your weekly pay will be, but you kind of toast to pursuing the arts, both characters. So I just wanted to ask, do you think Abe is starting to see or become more accepting of what Midge is doing as a career?
I think he's becoming more accepting of her pursuit of carving out her own life, if that's, whether that's going to be lucrative for her? Abe doesn't know. Is it going to be, healthy for her in the long run? Abe's not sure. But there's this growing admiration on his part, I think, that here's this woman who's it's kind of the lesson we all need to learn, in our, as we grow and as we age, which is, you make the best of a bad situation. And I think Abe realizes that that Midge is doing that she's, her marriage fell apart, her family, her role as a mother and a, homemaker dissolved. But did she, lie down on the couch and eat bonbons and, drink vodka all day? No. She fall into depression? No. She didn't throw in the towel. She figured out something that, and something challenging, not the easy road, and something kind of unconventional certainly for women for that time. And I think there's both, I think all of these characters, but certainly, I sort of see like, in a way, as different as they are, Midge is a product of Abe and Rose. They're fighters. They're relentlessly, determined. Do they make mistakes? Of course. Do they take the wrong path? Of course, sometimes. But they're never going to, much in the same way that Moish and Shirley, and they're just not going to roll over. They're going to figure out, they're going to take a bad situation and see how they can improve on it. So yes, I don't think it's for Abe, but to answer your question, it's not specifically comedy or show business that he's impressed with or enamored of. It's really more of just this idea that she's being a self-starter.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And on that point of kind of show business, I just have to ask you before you move on about that cape. What was the inspiration, do you know, for that cape, and how much fun was it to, you have some really great, some moves with that cape. So how much fun was that?
It was fun. It was challenging. I wanted to see if we could, slip it into more episodes and more scenes. But to be totally honest, this is, when they first presented me with this idea, Dan Palladino, came up to me and he said, this is because he was going to direct that episode. And a week or two before we started, he said, listen, we're going to put you in a cape. And we're gonna outdo the romper from the Catskills episode and put you in this cape. So he said, but it's going to require rehearsal. So I literally would come in for rehearsal sessions when I wasn't shooting, even days when I wasn't called to the set, and it'd come in for cape rehearsals. And that meant working with Steadicam operator. It meant working certainly with Donna Zakowska, our costume designer, because the cape had to be built in a certain way that it could do what we wanted it to do. So that meant altering it, weighting it in a certain way. It was much more involved. It wasn't just like, oh, let's just pull this off the rack and turn around and everything's good. Although Abe makes it look easy, it actually required some serious rehearsal time.
He does make it look easy, but it also, the effort really paid off, because that opening shot going into the theater, coming out of the cab, is so kind of mesmerizing. So effort very well spent. I have to ask you too, this season brings back Jason Alexander's character for 2 episodes. And I just love watching Abe and Asher work together, and I love watching you and Jason work together. So what is it about those 2 characters? They're such kind of an odd couple, but what is it about them that works so well? Like what about their dynamic just translates so well?
I think it has to do with, they have all of this history. They were young when they, first got together, and were out there trying to be activists. And So they have this whole, they're dragging behind them years and years of baggage. And I sort of, it's funny you asked that because I kind of see them as a bit of a married couple. They really do, there's this love and sort of mutual respect, and they laugh together. But boy, something in the universe falls the wrong way, and the wheels completely fall off for these two. And they go from 0 to 100 in a second. And so it has that kind of that dynamic of an old married couple. I love that. And Jason's just a blast to work with, of course. And there's that.
That scene with the two of you in the FBI after the dinner, where we learn that Asher and Rose had dated for some months, which supposedly Abe was aware of, but maybe not. He doesn't remember it. I just wanted to ask you about, what is it about that revelation to Abe do you think rankles him so much? Because it's something that supposedly Rose told him 20-something times, but he's really blocked from his memory.
Yeah, it's really, the scene is really more about, it's not so much about memory. It's really about how kind of self-centered Abe is, and certainly was at that time. He's working on his, dissertation or something. And, he's just not really listening. He's too self-absorbed. It's a character flaw, and so she tells him, she says in the scene, "I told you 20 times, but you don't listen." She says, like all women say to their husbands, "You don't listen." And so Abe is busted. I mean, but it's, that his humiliation and his that little pain that he feels of betrayal overrides his his embarrassment. And I think he cops to it. I think he realizes that he's just a bad listener, because he's not that he was a professor. He was they're the ones you listen to, and they don't have to, they're not accountable for what people might say to them. So I just think it's just part of, has become part of his makeup.
Yeah, you mentioned that those two characters kind of go from 0 to 100 very quickly, on the drop of a dime. And that's something I love about the series kind of more broadly, is there is moments where you get to really lean into the humor and kind of exaggerated comedy. One of those moments that I love is when Abe is being chased by those matchmakers, and he runs out into the street and is kind of serpentining through the street and ends up accidentally taking communion. So I just wanted to ask you about leaning into some of those more farcical moments of the series, and ask also, you've done farce on stage before, Lend Me a Tenor, not that long ago, maybe a decade or so ago. So just wanted to ask you, does that experience at all help when you get these scripts that kind of need this over the top humor, so you can, kind of translate that on screen?
Well, I think all work that we do informs, future work. And but it's a good question, because this show does lend itself to kind of wider shots. It's not all talking heads, so there is more of a theatrical feel to it. Longer scenes, longer takes, fewer cuts, more body language than just everything happening in the eyeballs. And so yeah, I think having worked, and it's true of a number of us on Maisel, having had experience in the theater certainly informs. And it also is about Dan's and Amy's love of the theater. They see everything, and they're very discerning, and they try to exploit, take advantage of the actors that they have and their skill sets.
Yeah, something else too about the series that I just love is it really balances those kind of hilarious scenes with a lot of heartfelt. The characters are very emotionally real, and we get some lovely kind of scenes between the characters that are very moving. One of which this season in the finale is when Moish falls ill and is unconscious, and the family rallies around him. Abe gets to deliver a really beautiful monologue reading him his obituary after he comes out of his coma. So I just wanted to ask you about that scene too. Number one, what do you think it is about Moish's illness that strikes Abe so much? Because he really, it feels very personal, and he's really rattled. But also, to explore that monologue and have the time to really explore and find those beats in that scene, because it's just so moving and really beautifully done.
Yeah, of course, it starts with the fact that, they're contemporaries, and that this is a very, very distinct, strong indication that, our time is getting shorter, and we're all, we're all susceptible to problems, health problems, and but deeper than that, it has to do with the fact that all of a sudden, when it really does come down literally to life and death, you see things differently, you assess things differently, and you focus on what Abe does, because he couldn't get someone to write this obituary, someone who does that, for a living. He's allowed to sort of take a moment and, well, I'm going to talk about this guy, and then you talk about the good things, and then he realizes these good things, not only are they plentiful, but they're really deep. They're an act of generosity and of sacrifice and heart, and it's one thing just to know these things on an intellectual level, but when you kind of itemize them and describe them, they really become special, and they become more real, and so that's what I think he has this opportunity to really see Moish in a whole new light, downplay the negative and accentuate the positive stuff, and he finds that, wow, this is really, as a man, he's a good man, but these generous and gracious and altruistic gestures touched Abe and touched Abe's family personally, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, and finally, before I let you go, Maisel will be back for a fifth and final season. So I just wanted to ask you, I'm sure there's not much you can tease us on what's to come. So if you can't tease anything, what do you hope to see happen for Abe and the family in the final season? Now that the scripts are coming in, is there anything you'd love to see Abe do before you have to say farewell to the character?
Oh boy, I always put my faith in these writers, and they never disappoint, and I feel like it's probably healthier for me to instead of wishing or hoping or asking for something, it's really more a matter of staying open, keeping an open mind, and obviously I hope they don't kill me off, but other than that, I really feel like it's just for me, it's an exercise in keeping my antenna kind of up there and tuned, and keeping myself in a state of readiness for just about anything to come down the pike. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. We look forward to seeing the fifth season, Tony. Thank you so much for your time. An absolute pleasure to speak with you. Congratulations on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 4, and thanks for talking to Gold Derby today.
Thank you. Pleasure.